Welcome to the video where I will either make people very happy or very upset, or it's going to be probably a video where someone is going to be type in the comments and say that I put Seattle way too high and that they actually suck. But yeah, it is the Power Rankings. It's Week 8 edition. And let us begin in 23rd. And for the first time in 3 weeks, there will be a team that were dead last week in the Power Rankings and will stay dead last this week. And that, of course, is Philadelphia. The Union once again lose this week. They lost to Dallas on the road 3-0. And it is just a very depressing time for Union's fans and certainly for the Union. I mean, they have now gone 5 games without a win. And during those 5-game stretch, they have scored a total of 1 goal. Yup, they have scored a total of 1 goal. And that also includes 200-something minutes now without scoring a goal. I mean, it is just, I don't know what to say about Philly that hasn't been said already. I mean, this team is just, there is serious problem with this team, whether it's the players are not giving them all, or the manager that doesn't know what the heck he's doing, or just the ownership in general. I mean, it is just, it's bad right now for Philly. And in 22nd, and this team dropped down 8 spots and was the biggest loser of this week. And that, of course, is the Whitecaps. And this is not just because of the fact that they lost 6-0 to Sporting KC that I make them the biggest loser. It's because the Whitecaps have now gone 3 games without even getting a win or a draw. They are on a 3-game losing streak. And doing these 3 games, they look nothing like a team that at one point was right up there in the Western Conference this season. But now all of a sudden they have dropped all the way down to 6 and hovering right above that red line. And for the Whitecaps right now, you know, it's pretty clear that they desperately need Kai Kamara back in this squad. If Kai Kamara does not get back into this squad anytime soon, then Vancouver is going to stuck in this spot for a while. Or maybe the Whitecaps ownership can just fire Carl Robinson now, and maybe Vancouver will be good again. Who knows? But yeah, in 21st, and this team dropped 1 spot from last week, and that, of course, is Montreal. So Montreal was up 3-1 in this weekend game against LAFC, but unfortunately they got a red card and they completely collapsed in the second half and conceded 4 straight goals, and they lost 5-3 in this game. And for Montreal, these last couple of games has been very rough, and I think now it's pretty clear that Montreal have a brand new problem that they have to deal with, and that, of course, is defense, and also the fact that every time they get a man sent off, they might as well just wave the white flag. I mean, this is the second time this season where after they went down to 10 men, they concede 4 goals. It happened against the Revs a couple of weeks ago, and it happened again against LAFC. And, you know, I think this one might be even more painful because they were up 3-1 at one point. And, you know, usually when you're up 3-1, and even though you're down to 10 men, it's kind of really hard to just completely give up that lead and just completely capitulate it. I mean, I feel like Montreal in that game, they should have clearly just bunkered down after they scored that 3rd goal. Like, they don't, why are they even thinking about committing forward and, you know, potentially might get another goal to make it even safer? You're already safe at 3-1, and you know you're going to have a long 45 minutes when LAFC just going to keep putting men forward. But yeah, Montreal is in 21st, and in 20th, this team actually gained a spot, but they lose this week, and that, of course, is Minnesota. So the reason why Minnesota gains a spot despite losing 3-1 to the Sounders is because most of the team around them have lost. But Minnesota, I think their loss was probably, I would say, the most impressive Although I don't think that's a good way to put it, because any loss is a bad kind of thing, and impressive is not a word that you would usually associate with losses. But Minnesota did kind of fight in this game against Seattle. They did put up a big fight to get the equalizer, but isn't that been the case for them throughout this whole season, where every time, like this Minnesota team, it feels like every single game they always concede first, and they always dig themselves down in a very deep hole, and they literally just decide to finally wake up in the second half and try to get a furious comeback. Unfortunately, most of the time they try to do that, most of the time they fail. In fact, it's not even most of the time, it's all of the time that they have tried to do a furious comeback and they have failed. I mean, it's just been that kind of sums up how Minnesota is this season. And in 19th, this team dropped 2 spots from last week, and unfortunately, it's gonna be my San Jose Earthquake. So notice how most of these teams right here that I've put are either in a losing streak or they're just winless in a while. And for San Jose, they've been winless ever since the first game of the season, and I've been saying it so many times, but I'm gonna say it again. The defense is absolutely a joke in this team. I mean, I think a third-tier football team can have a better defense than what our defense is. It's unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable, the fact that week in and week out, I see that defense make some really silly mistake, and I just have a feeling that we got to do something about it. We got to either change the formation, or we got to buy some new players and just blow up the defense and start over, because it's pretty clear that we can't continue to play that same kind of back line that we use. And if we do, we are not going to make the playoffs this season. I can guarantee you that. But in 18th, this team dropped 2 spots from last week, is Colorado. So the Rapids, after getting a very kind of impressive victory against TFC, although it was really TFC 2, they of course went back to full Rapids mode and lose to their rival RSL in the Rocky Mountain Cup. And in that game, Tim Howard decided to have a brain fart moment and basically decided to get himself sent off, because he basically ran all the way almost near the center circle to try to save a ball, even though you cannot do that. Like, I don't know what was Tim Howard thinking there. He just completely lost his bearings there, and he was rightfully sent off. And RSL scored 3 late goals on the Rapids, and this is a pretty similar kind of thing for the Rapids for the last couple of season. They just cannot win on the road. I think that's now 1 win in the last 28 or something like that on the road. I mean, that is just a horrendous road record. I mean, I know that in MLS it's hard to win on the road, but when you can only win 1 in 28, yeah, that is like, Rapids fan might as well just not watch road games, because they know what the result is going to be. It's always going to be either a loss or a draw. But yeah, in 17th, and this team stays at the same spot, and the only team that didn't play this week is DC United. So yeah, they're the only team that didn't play this week. I don't exactly know who they actually play next, but yeah, enjoy being in 17th spot. Enjoy being there until you probably realize that in these next couple of weeks they might be going back down to this lower row, because DC United, alongside with Philly, is one of the worst teams in the league. In 16th, this team moved up 6 spots, and I think they're the biggest mover, are they? Yeah, they are the biggest mover this weekend, and that, of course, is Chicago. So the Fire are the biggest mover this week, mainly because they got a very unexpected victory against the Red Bulls, and the fact that most of the teams that last week they were in with the likes of Philly, Montreal, Minnesota. Somehow they are the only one that was able to get a win, so that's why they move up very high up in the power rankings. And you know, again, it was a very impressive victory against the Red Bulls, and certainly they can thank their goalkeeper Richard Sanchez in that game. I mean, he was absolutely superior in that game against the Red Bulls. But in 15th place, and this team stay at the same spot, and that, of course, is Columbus. So Columbus stays in the same spot because they got a 2-2 draw. And in that game, you know, they could have easily won that one if they could have converted their chances again. But at the same time, they could have easily lost that game because they were pretty lucky that New England were just kind of like them. They just could not convert those chances away. But overall, that game was a very exciting game. I mean, it was a back and forth game. Both teams could have easily won that, and because of that, that's why they stay at that same spot in 15. And in 14th, they got a huge win this weekend against NYCFC, and that, of course, is Portland, who moves up 5 spots from last week. And indeed, it was a big win too, because NYCFC were unbeaten coming into that game. They were the best team in the league, and they're able to score 3 goals against the best team in the league, and also able to get a clean sheet against the best team in the league. And they did it all that while only have 25% possession. I mean, that is just very impressive for the Portland Timbers. And, you know, with that win, maybe this will really kind of kick off the Timbers season. Maybe Giovanni Savarese has finally kind of figured out this team a little bit, because certainly Portland has been playing much better than they had in the first couple of weeks they are on the road. And in 13th place, and this team stay at the same spot, and I know there's incoming Seattle comments about me still putting them way too high, but the reality is I don't know how I can move Seattle down. Seattle, of course, got a win against Minnesota. It was a very unconvincing win as they won 3-1. And, you know, the Sounders, you know, they did get their first win of the year, but like I said, it was a very not convincing win in that game. And if it makes people feel better, I will just put them at the same spot because it was very unconvincing. And, you know, and again, I can't really move them down because that win, because if I move them down, you know, that win that they have, usually the only time I move team down after a win is just either a team just blatantly cheated and got really lucky to get a win, and that is pretty much the only reason that I can move them down. And I don't think Seattle got really lucky and just blatantly cheated to get all 3 points against Minnesota, even though it was very unconvincing. But in 12th place, this team lost 6 spots and we used to be kind of like hovering around the top 5 area for most of the time, but now dropped down to 12 and lost 6 spots, is the Red Bulls. I mean, with everything in their favorites against Chicago in that game, they still find a way to lose. And it's pretty clear that the Red Bulls, they have a new problem that this team is developing, and that, of course, is clinical finishing. I mean, this team is just, there's been times where they just cannot finish at all, and there's also been time that they're just only relying on one guy to score the goal, and one guy only, and that, of course, is Bradley Wright Phillips. So yeah, they're going down to 12 in the standings of my power rankings, and in 11th place, this team was also hovering around the top 10 and the top 5, but now they are down to 11th, and that, of course, is the Galaxy. And like a couple of people that have commented in that match, and a couple of people that commented in the MLS Reddit and on the match thread, they were right that they said that in this game against Atlanta, all their weakness was exposed, because it was pretty clear that all their weakness was exposed. The defense was absolutely shocking. The midfield was very kind of, once again, very bad. And then going up front, they just could not do anything going up front. Even the mighty Zlatan couldn't do anything. I mean, you know, even though Zlatan was in this game for the second game in a row, and he was almost a ghost in that game. You might as well just not put Zlatan in there in this game if you were the Galaxy, because he just did nothing in that game at all. Atlanta did a very good job shutting him down. And, you know, I always kind of said that, you know, the Galaxy, even though in these last couple of games you might think that they're high up on the table, but they still look like a team that has some problems with their team. And one of the biggest problem, of course, is the defense, but now it seemed like the midfield and the attack is sort of an issue too. And also the goalkeeping is a big issue for them also, not to forget to mention that. But yeah, the Galaxy are in 11th and in 10th. This team dropped 3 spots. And actually, I'm going to stand up to write this. And that, of course, is TFC. So you can already start to see a little bit of the pattern of how these 3 teams used to be hovering around the top 5 and the top 10. But now all of a sudden this week they got a big loss. They get knocked out of the top 10. Well, for TFC, they're kind of still in the top 10. And unlike these 2 teams that were kind of like around the top 10 area for every single week of my power rankings, TFC, I think they're going to get back up to here. Once they get full strength, I expect them to probably get back to like 4th or 5th in the power rankings. I mean, that game against Houston, they basically put their TFC2 squad and tried to pretend to be competitive, but it turns out they got absolutely smashed 5-1 against the Dynamos. And because of that, you know, I have to move them down. I know even though they're not really playing their best squad out there and just bunch of reserve, it's still not good to lose 5-1 on the road, and especially with a TFC kind of team that, you know, you would expect to have they have a very good depth system. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it is the case. Although one thing I will say is, and I kind of said it in my match review, TFC 2, the team that they pretty much just put against the Dynamos, are currently second to bottom in the USL. So yeah, it's pretty clear that TFC 2 does not have a very good farm system, and it's pretty clear the only reason why TFC is so good is because they've been relying on a lot of signings and stuff like that. But yeah, in 9th, this team moved up 3 spot, and speaking of which, that Houston versus TFC game, Houston moves up 3 spots from last week, and you know, Houston, a massive win against TFC. I know it was a reserve side, but they really needed that win, and certainly scoring 5 goals and having your 3 best attacker each scoring in that game is certainly going to give a lot of confidence for Houston. And yeah, maybe this could be a kickoff for them to try to start kind of winning a couple of games, although I think Houston might have a couple of road games coming up, so I'm not betting on the fact that they probably won't start on a very good run again, because Houston they can't do anything on the road, no matter what it takes, and no matter what opponents they face. And in 8th place, this team moves up 3 spot, and that, of course, is RSL, who won the Rocky Mountain Derby against Colorado. They kind of got help with the fact that Tim Howard decided to just have a really just a blooper kind of moment. But then again, they did score 3 goals in that game, including a very impressive goal by Albert Rusnak late in the game with that free kick. And this is a win that RSL desperately needed because you know, they've been kind of struggling lately, and if they would have lost this one, I would have probably moved them down in terms of the power rankings. But since they won, they got an impressive victory against their hated rival. They moved up 3 spots. And in 7th place, this team also moved up 3 spots. And this team continues to impress me throughout this whole season. And that, of course, is the Revs, who, of course, drew 2-2 against Columbus. But that's another point on the road. And it feels like a couple of weeks ago when I said that they were going to get nailed and stable in the bottom of the table because how bad they were. Well, it seemed like they probably have listened to my power rankings video, and they probably say that, you know what, I'm gonna prove you wrong, Blues Knot. I'm gonna go on a good run, and you are forced to move me up the power rankings, and that is what the Rev is doing. That's what the Revs are literally having, an incredible season so far. Just a season that nobody thought they could be at this kind of position right now, and rightfully so. They're now all the way up to 7th in the power rankings. Although, you know, if they keep drawing games and maybe keep winning games and sometimes lose the game, this might be as high as it gets, because I still don't think the Revs are right up there in terms of the top 5. And in 6th place, this team moves up, let's see, 3 spots also from last week, and that, of course, is Dallas. So Dallas, of course, now have the honor of saying that they are the only unbeaten team in the league after NYCFC fall this weekend. And Dallas, of course, took care of their business against Philly. They won 3-0, and yeah, I mean, you know, I know I have been saying this a lot of how I usually don't give credit for Dallas in terms of their unbeaten run, but in the last couple of games they actually have looked impressive, and especially the defense too. I mean, their defense is just pretty much rock solid for the last couple of games. Although, to be fair, Dallas have had one of probably the easiest schedules so far this season, and you know, the defense will really be tested next week against NYCFC. And speaking of which, this team dropped down 4 spots from last week, and this means that we will have a new number 1. And that, of course, is NYCFC, who dropped down 4 spots from last week. And, you know, they lost to the Timbers 3-0. And because the team around them all won, most of the top 5 team won, they have to move down to the spot where pretty much all these 5 team moves up 1 spot, and this team, of course, is right there in that 5th spot. You know, for NYCFC, I don't think I should worry a lot about the loss against Portland, even though, you know, it was a bad loss, okay? They had all the possession in that game and they just couldn't do anything about it. But maybe that's just kind of like one of those days. And, you know, NYCFC, I still think they should going forward, they should still be a team that can potentially win the Supporters' Shield. Although now that just kind of like make the Supporters' Shield race a little bit more interesting with the fact that they lost to the Timbers this weekend. And I think this is also the lowest so far NYCFC has gone in terms of the power rankings. And, you know, I don't expect them to go even lower than... I don't think they'll drop out the top 10 unless they just literally started to fall apart. But, yeah, they're going to be in 5th in this week power rankings. And in 4th place, it's LAFC, who have now won 2 games in a row, and this team alongside with Atlanta are probably the funnest team to watch in this league. I mean, their attack is just unbelievable. They are just literally scoring goals for fun. You know, this week they scored 5 goals against Montreal, and you know, even though Montreal were down to 10 men in that game, it was so impressive how they score 5 goals and score 4 of them in the second half to come back from a 3-1 deficit. And, you know, LAFC right now, if you can just forgive them for that epic collapse they had against the Galaxy, and also the game that they just completely get smoked by Atlanta United. This team is actually a very decent team, and I think that, you know, as long as if they can keep healthy, they can definitely be challenged in terms of the Supporters' Shield, because that is how good LAFC is right now. And now they're in the top 5 in the power rankings, I think, for the first time this year. But in fourth, or not in fourth, in third, this team moves up one spot, or actually no, this team stay at the same spot, is Orlando City. So Orlando City won their game against the Quakes. You know, they had a 3-0 lead in that game, although they did kind of give up 2 late goals to win 3-2. And I think out of the 3 teams that have won in the top 3, I think this is probably the least convincing one, because, you know, Orlando City, they could, if they would have scored maybe 4 or 5 against the Quakes, then maybe I will put them second place, maybe. But in second place, this team moves up 2 spots from last week. And that, of course, is Sporting KC, who won 6-0 against Vancouver. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Vancouver just completely lost their cool, and they basically went down to 9 men in that game. But take nothing away from Sporting KC, able to capitalize on that. And even when they were down to just, when they had, well, not down to, but when they had 2-man advantage before that, they look absolutely amazing. And, you know, Sporting KC is a team that has been around the top 5 of the power rankings for a while, and something tells me that this Sporting KC team wants to join in the fun and pretty much representing the Western Conference as the lone team that might have a chance to win the Supporters' Shield. But at number 1, and I think this team was number 1 a couple of weeks ago, if I forget, I think it was Sporting KC that was number 1 a couple of weeks ago. But at number 1, it is going to be Atlanta United. I mean, Atlanta is just the hottest team right now in the league, besides Orlando City. They are just looking absolutely unbeatable and just absolutely untouchable ever since they lost 4-0 in that first week. And they're just firing on all cylinders. And in that game against the Galaxy, everything just works for them in that game. And that's why it's kind of quite surprised when I said in the match review that they only won 2-0, because I felt like they could have won more in that. But yeah, that of course is my power rankings. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this power rankings? Do you think some teams I put is too high? Seattle? Or did you think I put some team way too low in the power rankings? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.